I'm Transapient, and before I get into this, I want to give a quick shout out to a commenter on my previous video, which was my first Pacific Rim Uprising impressions, which thus far it seems I'm like the only one who liked it or even thought it wasn't half bad. But anyway, the point is, even though I saw it 3 times in theaters, I still couldn't, I never got the names of like the 2 of the kaiju besides, the 3 main kaiju besides Raijin. But a commenter by name of Manda1771, if I remember that correctly, commented, letting me know that they were Strike Thorn, the one with the 2 tails with the spikes, and Hakuja. So thank you very much, Amanda, for pointing that out. If you ever happen to watch this, so thanks for clearing that up. Anyway, on to the review. Anyway, well, not a review so much as a kind of a overview, because now I've often stated in many previous videos that I think how a lot of modern children's books or children's publications or publications directed or definitely directed towards children can often be very lacking or have not a lot of effort into their depictions of prehistoric life. Well, this time though, I want to do something a little different. It's focusing not so much on the science of things and more on the art, specifically, of course, PALEOART, Visions of the Prehistoric Past. Now, just a quick little debriefing. PALEOART is the reconstruction of prehistoric life. It is very unique in the realm of art in that it actually is kind of like this bridge between objective fact and imagination, because I mean that's what you kind of have to reconstruct creatures that we are in all likelihood never gonna see ourselves. But this book is really, really interesting. I got this I believe for Christmas last year, and it was definitely worth it, because like I said earlier, it's a collection of well, first of all, it's a collection of a lot of different kinds of art from stuff that anyone with a passing interest in paleo art is probably going to recognize, to maybe some more obscure figures and names. And it's not so much on the science of the animals themselves and paleontology. It is truly more focused on the art and the artists and their times they lived in, what influenced them, and how it was how paleo art is really is kind of an underappreciated art medium. So yeah, anyway. So yeah, it's I especially was intrigued by some of the earliest chapters, because, well, first of all, this is like the very first, the very first known depiction of paleo art that we know of. And if it looks very scribbly and stuff like that, that's probably because it is. It was done. This was done on a whim, on a really small sheet of paper by a, what's his name? Let's see, Henry Thomas Dellebeck. Alrighty then. So yeah, this is the one that started it all, and the first to actually try to put the flesh on the bones of prehistoric creatures that no man had ever seen before. So really interesting stuff here. Very humble beginnings, but it's gonna lead to a lot of big stuff, you know. And yeah, the very earliest these earliest chapters go into some really interesting details as to how our very concepts of nature and how we saw the natural world and stuff was changing, and that the very concepts of extinction, species dying out and being replaced and stuff. This was all new and pretty strange to a lot of people at first. Yeah, there's so the prehistoric world was kind of like a projection, kind of, if you will, or they saw it as it could be seen as a very sublime or a very foreboding, a chilling, or even horrifying kind of concept. Like check this out. This is by quote by this Mantel, Gideon Mantel, I think. Is it Gideon Mantel? Can't. I'm not gonna scan all this place just to find that. But anyway, this is quote from Reconstructing the Iguanodon. In truth, I believe that its magnitude is here underrated, he wrote in 1833. For, like Frankenstein, I was struck with astonishment at the enormous monster which my investigations had called into existence, and was more anxious to reduce its proportions rather than to exaggerate them. That's like downright almost Lovecraftian, almost this kind of like the sense of new scale and magnitude, and I know it could also look like a lot of these were the depictions were very exaggerative and monstrous caricatures and stuff like that, but a lot of it is due to it wasn't like they were trying to purposefully make it like that. That's actually was considered valid at the time, because it's kind of like I remember me and my brother once went to this art museum, and we saw some pictures of or some paintings that were done in like what was it, the Byzantine era, I think I don't know. Anyway, around medieval times. But yeah, I'm not the biggest history buff, but anyway, around medieval times they did depictions of the crucifixion, you know, of Christ. But when you look at the figures and stuff in the paintings, you saw that they all had medieval clothing on, and the Roman knights that were there at the crucifixion, they had not like knights, you know, armor on and stuff. It was because historical accuracy, or that concept of being historically accurate to something, just wasn't a thing to them, really. And that kind of goes back to seeing this new prehistoric world is all this kind of really bizarre and strange and even horrifying place. I mean, just look at this spread itself. I can't remember who exactly did these, but this is actually one of my favorite pieces, because I mean, just look at it, the sense of foreboding, this eternal night, because there were, I know that this was done by an artist who at one point actually thought that these plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs and stuff were actually like literal demons and stuff, like creations of the devil and whatnot. I mean, jeez. You know, come to think of it, these guys kind of remind me of something. I can't quite remember what, but anyway, that's why I was some of the earliest stuff and how we were forming our new opinions and knowledge was most interesting. And oh, check out this interesting little quote by Mark Twain. "The less said about the pterodactyl, the better. It was a spectacle, that beast, a mixture of buzzard and alligator, a sarcasm, an affront to all animated nature, a butt for the ribald jests of an unfeeling world." It's okay, sweetie. He couldn't have known what we know now. We all think you're beautiful nowadays. Anyway, so yeah, those were among, of course, the very earliest impressions and definitions of PALEOART. Oh, and of course, it has some of the most famous works, like The Country of the Iguanodon by, who's it by again? John Martin. And yeah, it's, the scenery and scale and scope is like downright apocalyptic even. I mean, I would not want to be in this country here. I mean, wouldn't want to get any postcards and stuff like that from this place. So yeah, what's over here? But of course, like on these like earliest days, like paleo was really it was really between like a select few people. But that of course changed with these guys. These are of course the famous Crystal Palace dinosaurs and exhibitions that I'm sure most people have seen things like this. This exhibition, these Crystal Palace sculptures and stuff, of course it goes into detail about the creation and stuff like that of them. Really interesting stuff. But this was the first time that the paleo world, these extinct creatures were available for the widespread general public to view and stuff. So it really is a point of very great significance. And also another great historical part of the fossil era was, of course, the Bone Wars. Yeah, they got a whole chapter dedicated to this, and of course this was perpetrated by, let's see, the two scientists were Edward Drinker Cope and Charles Marsh, I believe. And I think even Michael Crichton actually had like an unfinished manuscript of a book that's now been like found and republished and stuff like that. Dragon's Teeth, I believe. So very interesting stuff. It certainly was. I mean, they probably already have some movies and stuff like that about it too. But so yeah, really cool stuff. And of course it was actually during this time that was forged one of the most well recognized names of all paleo art. Like even if you like only have like a passing interest in it, or even if you've just seen a lot of pictures of dinosaurs, you've probably seen this guy's work. I am of course speaking of Charles R. Knight. That's right. This guy revolutionized paleo art, and it was really interesting to really read about why, or how. It wasn't just like his technique, or like just the way he was painting and stuff like that. It was just the way he portrayed them and stuff like that. Because, well, I'm sure like some of you have probably heard that he actually used like he would actually like sculpt like little miniature versions of the models and stuff of the creatures, and like study them to see how like the light, you know, fell upon them and stuff like that, so he would be able to draw them more accurately. And that was what revolutionized this place, the accuracy and the true to life, the lifeness that he wanted to imbue with it. Because again, like a lot of the previous creatures, I mean, look at them, they come across as these really kind of just unnatural, monstrous creatures. But what Charles Knight did was he portrayed them like as he saw them through like a naturalist's eye. He portrayed them as like real animals, well, at least with the most scientific knowledge we had at that day. So yeah, you look at these things. I mean, even though I know they're not accurate to today's standards, but these the Lalops, I believe these were. I wonder if it's been if the genus is valid anymore. I don't think it is, but anyway. But yeah, you look at these things and you can believe them. You know, like they look like they are natural animals. You know. So yeah, there's all sorts of great stuff by him. Like there's just some of his best work. It's just really interesting to see that kind of stuff. But it wasn't just the scientific aspect. Paleo art is there's also a chapter that goes into paleo art as its own art form. Like these frescoes was this, I believe it was the original artist is Heinrich Hardner. But first you'll note reconstructed by Hans Johns Ickheil or whatever. Anyway, these frescoes were actually like lost in like I think World War II, and the original like plans and prints for the designs were rediscovered and then reconstructed. And these were not strictly done for scientific purposes, but were for just purely art and demonstrating that PALEOART, or the artistic portrayal of prehistoric creatures, could definitely just be its own thing. I mean, look at this Dilophosaurus. I mean, of course, we know that it probably, of course, more than likely had a sail along its back in life, but this is obviously a very interesting flight of fancy here. Oh, speaking of flights of fancy, this guy looks like he needs to take something, man. Anyway, so yeah, really interesting stuff in that regard. There's also, in regards, even though there are maybe some lesser known ones, there's also ones that I'm sure everyone, once again, like Charles Knight, will probably recognize this upcoming piece. And there's a whole chapter on this one. It's, of course, The Age of Reptiles by Rudolph Zallinger. That's right, this was before he went on to pull Santa's sleigh. But anyway, so yeah, The Age of Reptiles was, actually, it goes into a lot of detail as to what the rest of the world, and how that was instrumental in the artist's personal way they handled things and sought to portray animals. Like, this was actually heavily influenced or has a few influences of the Cold War at the time. Like, all these giant, powerful beasts. I mean, even though none of them are really attacking each other now, I mean, they definitely could start destroying each other at any time. And those volcanoes in the background, I mean, it's actually kind of more tense than at first glance, you know? Pretty interesting stuff. And on the exact opposite spectrum, there were paleo artists that were much more involved. Like, these are actually by an artist, Mathurin Minut, or I don't know, Mehut, or yeah, it's French. But point is, this guy was actually sometimes involved in the war directly, and by the war I mean like World War II and stuff like that. And they were so it's a much more flighty and more dynamic and vivid, portrayal of the creatures and stuff like that. So, interesting stuff. Speaking of vivid portrayals, one of the another of the greats is, of course, Zenyk Berean. Zenyk Berean did a whole lot of illustrations for a lot of stuff, and his work is it just has this really interesting or recognizable look to it, similar to some of the other ones like Charles Knight and stuff, and that he did a lot of really in a more subtle kind of way, made things very carnal, very brutal. Like, see all this group of cavemen, and they're just chilling out, eating, having a family dinner and stuff like that. Everyone's all nonchalant and stuff. Well, there's one little detail I'm not mentioning, but once you know it, this whole thing becomes pretty disturbing. And look, even when things aren't necessarily doing things in his work, there's always like a lot of potential energy to them, and it's really interesting how the book explains it and stuff. Like, there's some that hold up, I lost my place. There it is. Look at this. He actually used some of the canvas to portray the scales on some of the dinosaurs and stuff like that. Like, see, there's another thing. Like, they have you can tell how muscly and how full of potential energy these things are. So yeah, cool. And apparently the guy didn't exactly have the most ideal of childhoods too. So I don't know, maybe that played a role in his rather bleak portrayal of a lot of the stuff. Like, it's even apparent in his very first work of PALEOART. Look at this. Just gonna take a moment for you to soak in just how hopeless this is. Memento mori. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, so there's also, of course, a whole lot that goes into to how different artists, different styles have so much more of an inspiration in what they do. Like this is all by this is another artist which some PaleoArt fans would probably recognize, Neve Parker, and he's really well known for how stark and contrasting his portrayals are. Like, I think he actually used to be a pilot. It's mentioned. So, and it definitely shows in several of his works and stuff. But there are others, like there's an artist called Maurice Wilson. That's right, Maurice Wilson. And I want to take a moment to compare and contrast these two. First, we got Neve Parker with his very stark, very three-dimensional works, but also this Maurice was much more inspired by Asian paintings or of animals and stuff, like the very wispy, soft clouds, and plants, the hard contours and stuff, which gives it all a flatter appearance. So really interesting stuff. There's a lot more of his art, and they indeed are very artistic in their portrayal of the animals. And it's the original Rodin pair on their honeymoon. Anyway, so yeah, and there's also a whole lot of art from. First of all, holy crap! I just gotta take a moment to look at this again. Man, I love this piece. It just looks so darn creepy for some reason, at least to me. It just has this effect. But this is actually by a Russian paleo artist, Kim Kardashian Floyd. I'll call him Floyd. So, yeah, anyway, there's actually, he and many other artists actually, had a whole lot of art that until recently we had no idea existed outside of the old Soviet Union and stuff like that. So again, products of their time with the Cold War and stuff. And I noticed that a whole lot of these, like, they have kind of a reddish kind of tinge to them and stuff like that. You know? Maybe call this guy more like Red Floyd instead of Pink Floyd, you know? I wonder if that was a coincidence, that whole red motif. Oh well. Anyway, so yeah, there's actually some really impressive works that they did and still remain relatively unknown. There's a work called "This is the Tree of Life." This is a fresco by, hold up, what's it by Alexander Milkala Beesternhaven, and it's like the scale of it and the amount of detail. This is only one part of it. I think is like on par with Zallinger's Age of Reptiles. Yeah, I mean, just to see it and stuff, you know. So yeah, man, don't tase me, bro. It's not what you think, man. Ain't nothing but a thing. Okay. Oh man. Anyway, but yeah, and even though, again, these, of course, by modern strict scientific standards, a whole bunch of these creatures are rendered completely obsolete, but still, I think I'd let, the book has a very good saying right here. I'm just gonna pause over that. You guys can pause that. There we go. So, yeah, this is an absolutely fascinating. Oh, hold up! Forgot to fix you there. There you go. This is an absolutely fascinating book, and hold up. I can't remember how much it is. Let me check real quick. Here, pardon me, miss. Here, you can use this thing called Machines. Hold up, PALEOART. PALEOART Visions of the Prehistoric Past. This wondrous thing called a computer. Can't find it on Amazon. What the heck? There it is. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Alright, let's see. What do we have here? $74? Oh, well, that's not maybe as much as I was expecting. I was expecting like hundreds of dollars or something. So, okay, it's still a little pricey. I mean, up there above 50 and whatnot, but still, if you're a fan of PALEOART or prehistoric life, their portrayal or art history or art in general, I would. This is actually a really strong recommendation because it really does a very interesting job of just kind of opening a new light, if you will, onto these portrayals, all these artists even and stuff like that, and what they did and went through and stuff to portray the creatures like this. So yeah, really cool. But as always, that's all just this one Transapiens opinion. So let me know what you think. Do you have a favorite paleo artist, or do you or did you know or have any knowledge of paleo art in general? Let me know what you think below, or feel free to leave your thoughts. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.